On the 15th of July, the 1st South African Brigade under Lieutenant Colonel William Tanner begin their assault.
By 7 a.m., they control this southwest portion of the wood. By 9 o'clock, they had gained the north edge of the wood. There's not a huge amount of resistance on the first day. And at 2 o'clock, Tanner reports to Lucan that he had taken practically the entire wood, but was expecting heavy counterattacks.
Counterattacks and relentless bombardments. This wasn't just a battle for territory, this was a battle for survival. At 3 o'clock on the 15th, the Bavarian division attacked in the east from the Jinshi Road. At 20 to 5, the Germans attacked from the sunken Fleurs Road in the north. By 6:30 p.m., Tanner spoke to Lucan by telephone, reporting extremely heavy casualties, and that one company of the 2nd South African Infantry was virtually destroyed.
Well, they were isolated, they were exhausted and under constant fire. Yet, they somehow held on in the face of the relentless barrage, retaining control of the entire perimeter of the wood, excluding this part here on the northwest corner. As dusk set in on the 15th, the German rate of shell fire reached 400 shells per minute.
My goodness.
Can you imagine the conditions in those woods and what the soldiers on the ground were facing?
It must have been horrific. By July the 16th, they have the semblance of a two-man trench running through the wood.
But they also have another problem. Since this northwest section and the village is still in German hands.
So they come up with a plan. The men from the wood here will attack and move towards the North Road, and the men from the west side of Longueval will move up north and meet up with the South Africans.
But, and there is always a but, John, isn't there? This little area between the two roads is a heavily defended orchard, and there are no fresh troops, so they must make do with what they have.
At around 10 a.m. on the 16th, the brigade was running on sheer adrenaline and resolve. They launched the planned attack on German positions in the northwest corner of the wood, but were cut down by heavy machine gun fire. They tried to regroup, but they're subjected to heavy bombardment for the rest of the day. The men just can't get past the machine gun fire coming from the orchard, and no one could break through the German defenses. Casualties mount, and by nightfall, they're ordered back to retreat to the south of the wood. German artillery and machine gun fire never let up. By the end of the day, the South Africans were holding on by their fingernails.
As we get deeper into the woods, it's now clear that July 16 marked a turning point. By evening, the South Africans began to withdraw south of Princes Street and east of Strand to gather themselves for an all-out attack on the northwest corner of the wood.
Pulling back slightly allowed them a chance to regroup for a concentrated bombardment of the German positions in the northwest corner of the wood, also at the northern end of Longueval. But as we see time and again in this battle, the human cost would be staggering.
And nothing seems to go to plan. Now, on the 17th of July, the next coordinated Allied offensive on German positions takes place in the northwest corner of the forest. The 27th Brigade attacked northwards in Longueval, while the South Africans launched their own offensive towards the west.
The South African attack westward was a costly failure. The survivors were pushed back to their original positions, which by then were under even heavier German artillery fire. To make matters worse, that afternoon their commander, William Tanner, was wounded and replaced by Lieutenant Colonel Edward Thackeray, officer commanding the 3rd South African Infantry Regiment.
So now we have a new commander stepping in during one of the most desperate phases of the battle.
July the 18th was a day that truly tested the limits of human endurance. They saw some of the most brutal fighting of the battle. Early in the morning, the relatively fresh 76th Brigade of the 3rd Division launched an attack through Longueval to link up with the South Africans in the woods.
But this time they were more successful. In response, the Germans started an intensive artillery bombardment, much worse than anything which had come before, and which would last for nearly 8 solid hours. The shelling obliterated defensive positions on the perimeters and blasted the wood to pieces. It was the heaviest the division had ever experienced. And John, I cannot even imagine what it must have been like The whole wood must have felt like it was ablaze, on fire.
Unbelievable. This bombardment forced the brigade back. All sections of the trenches with their occupants are utterly destroyed. Thackeray sends an urgent message to Lucan requesting backup, but saying he would try to hold the line. Suddenly, at 3:30, the shelling stopped and an eerie calm settled over the wood.
So what can this mean? Well, only one thing: a German infantry assault.
Exactly right, Jeremy. The Germans were coming.